Well, hi everyone. I am Lauren Cantor, and thank you for joining this morning, afternoon. I know I have people from all over the world. Appreciate you all joining. This is being sponsored by the Wharton Club of the UK and the AI Studio, and we're hoping to do a couple of these like every other month. And my co-host Steve Smith is doing one in May, so make sure to sign up for that one. I really thank you for taking this time this morning. I apologize in advance that I often speak very fast. So please, if you have any questions, please interrupt or post a question in the chat. Steve is going to be monitoring the chat, so we'll keep it interactive. I want to keep this as interactive as possible. So again, please feel free to interrupt me at any time. So today I wanted to talk to you about thinking in systems, but let me first start with a little bit about myself. I'm also a graduate of Wharton 98. I've run COO of the Wharton Club of SoCal. But after school, I spent 25 years on Wall Street, and then I pivoted about 10 years ago. And now I focus on education, AI strategy, and helping teams integrate AI and design into their work. I teach AI at Caltech and also a couple of the art schools. So when I think of systems, I wanted you to think about today how much of your work is actually spent doing judgment work and how much of your time is just doing overhead. So the things that you don't really require your brain. So we want to think about that because today we want to try to reduce that cognitive task so you can spend time focusing on the things that really require your expertise. Today, with the current expectations of AI, there's a really huge tension where some of us expect it to be magic and really do anything that's possible, and that sometimes we get frustrated when it really doesn't do what we want. And then we're also in fear of it, that we don't trust it to do for us because sometimes it hallucinates, but it also creates really good work. So we're kind of stuck in this frustration right in the middle where we want it to be a trusted colleague, but we really haven't given it enough information so it knows what we want to do. A lot of us, when we first experienced ChatGPT, we used it like a vending machine in a certain sense. We put in a prompt, we get something out, and we just move on. But you want to really think about AI as a system. You want to give it more information so it knows what you expect, it knows what you want, and then it will really reduce that cognitive task. And just some background, today, the way we actually use ChatGPT, the majority, these are numbers from OpenAI, and the majority of us really use ChatGPT and other tools for writing, but there's so much else out there to use it. And if we're using it for more, you're really on the top 5 to 10% of AI users. And a lot of, you can really do a lot of it, not just for work, but for your life as well. And AI is really on the move. It comes at you really fast. This is just a diagram to show that when ChatGPT first came out, and it could only do tasks that took humans 4 seconds. Now it can do tasks that humans take 10 hours. And that capability is doubling every 7 months. So AI is really moving very quickly. And today we're going to talk a lot about Claude. So I wanted to show you just this map. This is everything that Claude released in February and March. They released 80 updates or features in 60 days. So it can really be overwhelming about the amount of tools that are getting released and updates. But you don't really need to know all this unless it's your job, right? You don't need to know the newest and the best. You really just need to know the ecosystem that works for you. And one way to get the ecosystem to work best for you is you really want it to know who you are. So you want to make sure that it knows your preferences, it knows your projects, because the AI that knows you best is the one that you'll find most useful. And the one way that I did that, whoops, sorry. So today's goal is we're going to create a system that knows who you are so you can achieve better outputs. And you want the system to know you with both personal context and work specific context. So, context is a term that gets thrown about a lot, and it's pretty much just a knowledge base that you give your model. So, one way that I got my system to know me very well was to create a system brain. I had Claude interview me for over 3 hours where I talked about my personal values, my personal preferences, how I ran my business, what type of clients I was interested in. And it really got to know, it really surfaced a lot about me that I wasn't necessarily aware of, but it also got Claude to know me very well and how I like to run my business. And remember, AI really doesn't know your standards until you show it. So a lot of us tell it, like, create the best slides or what's the best design. It doesn't know what you mean by best. It doesn't know what you mean by modern. You really need to explain it objectively so it knows exactly what those rules are. So you want to give it a feedback loop or a set so it can interview you and understand when you say best, when you say success, it knows what you mean. And when we first started with ChatGPT, we were focusing on the prompt. We were all becoming prompt engineers. We were learning how to be the best prompters out there. Don't necessarily need to think about prompts anymore. You want to think about systems. And now I'll tell you what I mean by that. So when we think of a system, or when I think of a system in AI, it has pretty much 5 parts. It has first your personal context. This could be your values, how you write, your constraints, don't ever use M dashes. Then it also has instructions, the same things, what it can't do, how things should look like. It should come to you in a PowerPoint presentation. The knowledge base, this is anything either about you, about your business, about your client. If you're doing a project, this could be the client brief. Then you need to set a trigger, which is the prompt. And then you'll get the result, which should be repeatable and reviewable. So this is the 5-layer system that I like to work with. And I'll break it down for Claude in a moment. So the way to think about it now is you are an orchestrator. You're not just building a prompt and getting answers. You're orchestrating a lot of different systems and a lot of different tools. And the way to think about the systems also is let's think about a workflow, a tool, a task that we never want to do again. So think of your anti-to-do list. So what's something that you do every day that you really don't want to do all the time? So is there something that you repeat every day, like a daily brief? Is there something that you have to draft an email every day? What's something that you can make repeatable that can get out of your to-do list and give it to AI? So once you find that task, you want to build a workflow. This is how my brain works. I work in mermaid diagrams. You don't have to build your workflow this way, but I like to build out my workflows, think about each individual task, and then you'll take the task and tag them. So figure out, okay, this is where the human needs to be. This is where oversight needs to be. This is a task that I can repeat many times, or this is a task that needs more context, or this is a task that will create more context. So for instance, one of your research brief here, task to create a research brief, you can keep that context and use it for the rest of the task. These mermaid diagrams are for one of my students who was creating a flow to update case studies for her portfolio. So once you map out the task, whether you map them out in mermaid diagrams or work with AI to map them or handwrite them, you want to actually send that task back to the AI. I just put a screenshot in and ask Claude, what do they think about my flow? Where can it improve? How can I make it work better for Claude? So if I'm going to send this to Claude, how could it improve it? Okay. So then we have our feedback loop about our workflows. We have a workflow. Now what do we do? So we're going to use Claude because I think they have a bunch of great systems that help us do a lot of this knowledge work.
Hey, Lauren, sorry, there's
Yep.
one quick question. People are asking, will the slides be available after the event to be shared with people?
The recording will, the slides potentially, I have to ask George what they're sharing. I know they're doing the recording.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks. So the Claude ecosystem is, this is how Anthropic describes their ecosystem, right? The models are Sonnet and Opus. The agents that Anthropic is calling is their operating system. And from Anthropic, their agents are Cowork and Claude Code and the chat. And then skills are the applications and plugins that we build on top of it. And remember, we are the skills, we are orchestrating all of these layers. So we decide what gets built on top of this. Claude also has built, or Anthropic has built a ton of capabilities to power knowledge work. We're going to go through today CoWork, which is a system built for knowledge workers specifically. We'll use some agents. Connectors are tools where you can connect Claude to your other tools like your Gmail, your Google Drive, your Notion, Gamma, a lot of different things. Skills and plugins are also workflows and prompts that you write once that you can reuse. We'll also walk through how you can use Claude in Excel and PowerPoint. And there's also now an extension where you can put Claude right into your Chrome. So the system that I like to think about also is we start with the chat that we're all used to. This is when you need a fast answer, not necessarily a system. We'll talk a lot about projects because this is where you can create a team member, basically a playbook, and you can repeat the prompts over and over again. And projects exist in both CoWork and in chat, so they're very helpful. And then CoWork and code is where you get a little bit more in depth, where you can build a lot more agents, you can do more complex tasks, you can set it running, walk away for 10 hours and come back. So today we're mostly going to focus on projects and CoWork. So just some background on projects. So projects are basically an organized folder. It's like creating a Google Drive for your AI system. It allows you to organize your files. So if you have a new team member, if you have a new client, then you would create a new project, and it will section off that memory for that project. And this is great for instance, if you're hiring a new team member, you can create one project for onboarding, and then you can keep sharing that project as you hire new people. It's like a content management system in effect. The project has two parts, or three parts actually. The first is the project instructions, and this is the handbook. This is where you tell it who to act like, your rules, your constraints, what you want the output to look like. And then you add project files, and this is the context that you give that project. So if you're spending time creating a project for a new client, this is where you would put in the client brief or your research about that client or even your transcripts from conversations. And this is what a project in chat looks like. You can see up on the right, there's some memory that it's learned from me, how I'd like to work in this project, my instructions. You can see the files that I've uploaded, and then you can see the 3 chats that I've had in this project. It stays pretty sequestered in this project. So those are projects. I know I'm talking very fast. Any questions on projects? I'm going to use some in a bit, but any questions before I move on to CoWork?
There's nothing in the chat.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So CoWork this is where you go a little bit beyond projects. So CoWork was specifically built for knowledge workers. You may have heard of everyone using Claude Code. Claude CoWork is basically the same thing, but it makes life a little bit easier. It comes in the desktop app on your laptop, and the files live in your system, not in the cloud. So you control everything that lives in CoWork. CoWork is also permission-based. So with your approval, it can browse the web, it can use your computer, it can complete tasks on your behalf, and it can connect to your systems. It also has connectors so that you can connect it to your G Drive, your Chrome, your Apple Notes, your Figma. You can connect it to a lot of different things. Sometimes a lot of people just connect it to their Gmail and ask it to, send out emails or write emails. One I'll show you a tip is also you can ask it to read your outbox, your sent mail, and find out what your style is. How do you like to write emails? And then you can create a skill that which we'll talk about in a moment that always writes emails in your style. So within Cowork, there's plugins and skills, and the Anthropic has uploaded a bunch of them for you to start with. The first is a skill creator to help you create new skills. Skills are repeatable prompts, basically. You can repeat over and over again. Once you create a prompt that you really like and a workflow that works really well, you can save it as a skill, and then it makes it a lot easier to run it consistently, and you don't have to copy paste the prompt each time. Plugins are basically a series of prompts plus other connectors. For instance, here's the marketing plugin from Anthropic that includes a bunch of different skills, right? How to do competitive analysis, brand review. And then you can also open any of these skills, any of these plugins from Anthropic, and actually customize them for yourself. Then there's scheduled tasks within Cowork. You can set this up to run a specific task for you every day, every hour, every month. I run a daily briefing every morning where it goes through all the newsletters in my email to check and and to give me a briefing. So you don't have to pay extra for plugins. There is a marketplace from Anthropic where they have the official plugins. There's also a lot of other plugins floating around on the web. You just want to make sure that you make sure there's no malware within those. So we're just going to see how works in action. So here's just a simple prompt. This is a video since just in case Claude wasn't working today. So I wanted to write a follow-up to an email, and I'm going to use the Ask User Question tool, which is a great new interactive tool within Cowork. And you'll see it's going to ask me 4 questions about what type of email I want, um, and like the tone of voice. And then here it's checking my context to see if I have more information on the client, and then it's going to draft the email. So the Ask User Question tool is a really great addition to Cowork. You can ask it to turn on automatic. You can ask it to turn on by really calling it the Ask User Question tool, or sometimes it will just interact with you by itself if you ask it to ask you questions also. This is another way to use the Claude Code is I am creating a product brief, or I have it in my syllabus for my next class, and I wanted 3 different agents to review it. So I had my boss, a skeptical client, and the person most likely to push back. And you can see that it's going to create 3 different agents and 3 reviews, and then it's going to synthesize for me. And in Cowork, up on the top right, you can see it's the progress. So you can see what it's gone through and what it's doing. You can also interrupt it and add more context or add more questions in the middle of it. And here it's giving me a review of my syllabus, not ready to ship yet. But here's the document that I could download and use later on. Another thing I like to use in Claude Cowork is that there are tons, it is great at reviewing tons and tons and tons of information and files. So I don't know how many of you have heard of Lenny's newsletter or Lenny's transcripts, Lenny's podcast, but he gave access to all of his transcripts. And I asked Cowork to review these transcripts and pull out some go-to-market strategy information. So those were the transcripts as text files. It's gonna pull out information as a CSV file. I sped this up. It only took about 7 minutes, and then it's also creating an interactive dashboard for me about the frameworks within the podcast. and I asked it to create an agency playbook of how I would use these frameworks to launch a new business. So it's really great at digesting a lot of information, creating a system of agents, and giving you lots of different deliverables. You can ask for it in lots of different forms. You saw the interactive dashboard, you saw the text files, and also the tables. Any questions on cowork? Okay. So Claude Code is the next step up, and it seems pretty intimidating just because it has the name Claude Code. But Anthropic has made it a lot easier to use. You really actually never need to touch the terminal. Sorry, Kelly. What doesn't work well with cowork or coworkers? Are you asking about coworkers or cowork, Kelly? Whoops.
Co-work.
Cowork.
Yeah,
Cowork.
I'm just like, what in your experience, what doesn't work well with it?
It you can't. I haven't really found anything that isn't doesn't work as well. It's more of that some of the if you want to launch um, multiple agents and multiple tasks, sometimes that's better to do in Cloud Code because you can run a lot more in Cloud Code simultaneously.
Got it.
But Steve, have you found any limiting factors with cowork of what doesn't work well?
No, I mean, to the point Lauren just raised, I tend to use Claude Code a little bit more because I can spin up multiple sessions at once. But it does, and just I'm looking at the next question around the integration with MS Office. Cowork does work amazingly well with MS Office, with Word docs, PowerPoint docs, Excel docs, and and I don't know, Lauren, are you going to talk about the add-ins also that
Yeah,
Claude
I'm going to
has?
talk about those in a minute.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that was one of the questions I had.
Okay. And then also, if any of you are stuck in the Copilot system, co-work is expected to be added into enterprise plans soon. It maybe have rolled out, but not yet. Um, so again, with Claude Cowork versus Claude Code, it's really what's your personal preference. Um, Cowork and Claude Code do the same thing. They are literally the same thing, just with different user interfaces. As Steve and I mentioned, it's Claude Code mostly just because you can do more at once. Um, but and sometimes Cloud Code seems intimidating. This is the terminal view of Cloud Code. There's also a version of it in the desktop app, but you can talk to it just like Cowork, just like chat. You speak to it in English, and it works really great. So one reason why I'm talking about Claude today versus Gemini or Copilot, one, the Claude models, Anthropic models, are just exceptional. The answers that they give are just far and above better than for me, at least for than Gemini and for Copilot. Um, Claude also has all these different system layers, which I prefer. It has the skills, the plugins, the projects, the co-work and Cloud Code. Gemini um, is starting to build a system, but it's using notebooks. And ChatGPT also has skills and but skills are only available in an enterprise account, and it also has projects. But it's just the user interface with Claude and Anthropic makes life a lot easier. That's true. And like as Steve is saying, Gemini can't, it doesn't have the add-ins inside of Microsoft Office products. It uses all the Google products like Google Drive and Google Sheets, which Claude can use as well. OpenAI is building an add-in or does have an add-in to Excel, but it's rolling out slowly. So Claude Code is basically prototyping at the speed of voice. I am not a programmer, but I've been able to build tons of tools for my clients, for myself. This is one of the tools I built for my own business. It's a live website it's my mission control. So it has all of my tools, it has all my pipelines, it has all my agents. So it's basically everything where to tell me about my business and where everything exists. So just an example, it's a live tool, and this is just an example of something I built for myself. I've also built an agent that builds a whole brand review system, a chief of staff, one of my students built a tool that actually builds patterns for her client for their website. So it's pretty much anything you of a tool that you think you might need, you can build with Claude Code. So some examples of, if you're asking with Microsoft Office, of Claude where you already live. A lot of us use Microsoft Office tools. So this is, for instance, Claude in Excel and PowerPoint. So here I asked, you can see up here on the top, there's an add-in for Claude or for Copilot. I'm using Claude here in Microsoft Excel, and I didn't give it any information. I asked it to build a financial analysis for Apple. So it went online, it got all of the financial reports from Apple, and it's going to build 4 different sheets. I am not typing anything. I'm not asking any questions. So I sped this up because it took about 25 minutes to run, but it's creating an income statement, a balance sheet, assumptions, and then forward projections. It's going to format all of the cells so they look like dollar amounts when they should. It's going to use conditional formatting. You can see where those yellow cells are. It's going to also go back and check all the formulas and make sure that nothing is hard-coded and that everything is correct, at least from the data that it has. I wouldn't use this spreadsheet for without checking it myself. Something that I also like to do is then take this spreadsheet. Here you can see it's making a chart for me. I would throw it into ChatGPT and ask it to check the numbers as well. And then I would check it again myself, because even though it's checking it, even though it has, it's checking all the broken links, if you hand this spreadsheet in, it's your name, it's my name. So you really want to check and make sure that it gets everything correct. And like I said, this took 1 prompt and 25 minutes. And you can see a lot of information, probably a lot of this is what we all did when we were analysts a long time ago, or at least for me, a long time ago. And another fun thing, so I'm taking that spreadsheet and I'm going to ask Claude to build a PowerPoint from it. So you'll see in a second that I ask it in Excel to tell me what sheets, what slides I should have. And then it's just going to transfer over to the chat within PowerPoint. And I asked it only to build 5 slides, but you can see that it's walking through the 5 slides, and it's going to build them in a moment. But this took about 10 minutes, and I sped this one up as well.
Hey, there is another question in the chat, Lauren, from
Mhm.
Rohit, that says a brief comparison of the Gemini ecosystem with Claude would be good if you can touch on it.
Sure, and I can discuss it, and I can show it in a little bit if you like. So I'll show it in a moment if that works, Rohit, unless you want me to talk about it right now. Okay.
You can do it later, not right away. You can do it later in the discussion.
Okay, thanks, Rohit. So you can see it's building all these slides. It's using my color palette, and it did it pretty quickly. So one thing to think about when you're using Claude Code or Claude Cowork, Kelly, that was based on, I didn't give it a full template. I just gave it a color palette and a little bit of formatting. But yes, you can give it a template that you are used to using. So you don't have to give it everything at once. A lot of us, hear stories of Claude going crazy in people's computers and fear what it can do. You really want to start narrow. Like, I don't give Claude access to my business email. It has access to a secondary email, just because I'm very risk averse. A lot of people give Claude access to everything. Just go with what you feel comfortable. So you don't have to open up your world to Claude at once. But if you do, you want to let Claude learn the neighborhood in a certain sense. You want to tell it where your documents are, where, who you are, where your business files are, so that it knows where to find things. So I created a workspace map so it knows where to find things so that it doesn't look through everything every single time, and that will save you some tokens. Um, so the Excel to PowerPoint, I didn't copy paste anything. I just had Excel with the Claude plugin open and PowerPoint with the Claude plugin open. There's a button that a setting that you accept that allows it to connect to those two, or it's called Connected Apps, and it will connect across the Microsoft universe and Word as well. And it knows to transfer over. So tokens are basically characters almost in a certain sense. And you have a limit of how many characters you can use in a day. If you're using Claude, it's in 5 hours. They basically turn you off after about 5 hours if you've used too much. So I'm very precious with the tokens that I use in Claude. So I try to use a couple of tricks and to make sure that it's not reading the same thing over and over, because that will waste these tokens. Gaia, does that make sense? Okay, great. So six more things to think about before you're jumping into any of these things. You want to think about use case. Although I'm showing here a lot of work projects, you can use these for anything. I know there's a couple of women that are homeschooling their kids. They use Claude Code for that. You can use it to plan a trip, plan a wedding, and also obviously for lots of different knowledge work projects. You want to remember that this is support and not advice, that you are still the decision maker. So anything that you build with Claude or any of the AI tools, you really want to check and make sure that this is what you meant and that it doesn't have hallucinations in there. If you're using regulated workflows, if you're regulated by FINRA, the SEC, or Basel, you really want to check and make sure that you can apply those agents there, and that you're not breaking any confidentiality. Again, all outputs really must be reviewed. You want to check that there should always be a human in the flow in a lot of these tools. I'm not saying that your job should be AI'd away, but it can really speed it up. And again, you want to see what the system can see. Like I said, with the progressive trust, you want to decide what you give it access to. Claude Code and Claude Cowork are on your local system, whereas the Claude Chat is in the cloud. And you really want to make sure that you're following along with your work and personal information policies. And then again, confidentiality, you want to treat it like a vendor. You want to make sure to turn off the setting. You have to opt out to show that Claude can't train on your prompts. Make sure you opt out. And then you really want to make sure what you upload to it. I really wouldn't recommend uploading anything that's confidential unless you anonymize it first or at all. So at the end of the day, you have to remember that AI delivers speed and scale, but human judgment is what delivers the quality and the taste. So again, the human really should be in the loop. The bottleneck in our work used to be, do we have time to do this? Or do we know how to build this? Now that bottleneck really doesn't exist. The bottleneck is your judgment. How fast can you evaluate the things that AI is giving back to you? And then remember that AI is a new tool. It's not a fixed skill set. As I mentioned, it's changing every single day. You need to practice. If you want to learn AI, you need to play around with it. Always expect bad outputs. You will learn how to prompt. You will learn how to ask it the things that you want. If you don't get the right output a couple times, sometimes I just start a new chat and start over. But try one task at a time. Don't try to do everything at once. That is all I have of my prepared slides. I'm happy to answer as many questions as you have, or show you some more workflows if you like. And also, if you need to reach me, that's my email. My website is Field and Edge. I do have a newsletter that I post on LinkedIn as well as Beehive. So I'm happy to answer any questions. I think if you raise your hand, I can unmute you as well.
Oh, do you just want to cover that question that Rohit asked about the different platform?
Oh, sure. So the Gemini ecosystem is kind of all over the place. There's Gemini, which is the chat. There is that, within Gemini, there's a new setting called Notebooks, which actually connects to Google Notebook. Google Notebook is an amazing tool that allows you to do create your own knowledge base and do research on that tool. So it's similar to projects, but you can add even more information there. There's also a tool for Google called Anti-Gravity, which is kind of like um, Claude Code, but each one has a different user interface. So it's not, there's now new, also Google is in Chrome. So if you use Chrome, you can open Gemini right there. And also, pretty much all of the tools have access to can connect to your Google Drive. So it's not just Gemini. So Eric, do you want to unmute,
Thank
Eric?
you. Thanks.
Uh-huh.
Wow, I got lucky to be the first question. I thought you'd have all kinds of them in there. I thought I'd be in this queue here. That was a really good presentation. Thank you. I guess where I'm stuck a lot of times is I use all the tools. I've been using them for quite some time. Now that we've got these really easy agents to build, I bounce back and forth. I'll take an example where you were talking about the one with email. Every email I write, I copy, paste. I've used ChatGPT since the beginning. I've trained it to know exactly how to make it not type A personality, put a little bit of EQ in it, those things. I paste it, it writes it, I paste it back. Things like that, I'm debating whether I start to put the plugins in, write an agent that picks it up, make it easier versus just Alt-Tab, copy, paste, throw it in. For all of these, how do you determine when to take the time to build the agent versus just manually do the work like we've been doing before? So I'm in this, limited time. Do you come across this? Are you struggling sometimes when to build it versus just do it type of
Well,
scenario?
totally. For me, it's also like, so how much control do you want over it? So
Yeah, exactly.
I have a skill that writes emails for me that's based on my professional tone. But I would never, I don't do the copy paste. I let it write it, then I read it again and I edit it myself. And that's just my personal preference. But if it's one of those things that you're answering, 400 emails a day, then you might automate it. It's that anti-to-do list that I created basically. So it's like, what do you hate doing? Or what really doesn't need your brain power? So if you have, let's say you're in, I can't think of a business that you wouldn't need to put attention in. But if it's just that you need to say thank you, or something very quick, maybe that's something that you don't need to do every day, or something that you would pass off to your executive assistant. Maybe that you would automate. But it's really what you are comfortable with. Steve, do you have a different way that you judge?
No, I mean, it's a great question. I mean, I put in terms of automating agents and things like that, right? Anything I do that is a repeatable process, I do a lot. I try to build an agent for, to be perfectly honest. Um, I've connected the stuff. I've actually, like Lauren, I've trained these tools in my writing. And I actually, Lauren was showing her mission control. I have something similar that's actually monitoring all my emails and all my calendar stuff and actually drafting responses for me because it's been trained in my voice, but I don't let it send it. But I don't actually have it respond to everything. I only have it respond to things that I flag for it. So I tag those. But to me, just anything that I can, that is just an again and again process, right? That I try and figure out, okay, how do I build an agent for this? Because I don't want to keep doing the same prompts and doing the same things. And sometimes I build a skill, sometimes I build an agent. It just depends on what I'm trying to do.
Thanks, Steve. So Rajiv, tokens, that's basically like I said, it's characters. So it's not exactly characters. It's pretty much every word that the AI has to read and the answer that it gives you. So each model has a different amount of tokens that it can use per chat, but also per day. The per day depends on how much you pay for the system. So a free tool, you'll run out of tokens. Probably if you had done that Excel spreadsheet, you'd have been done. And as you pay up the spectrum, even I run out of tokens. I pay for $100 a month in Claude, and I'll run out of tokens and I have to wait a couple hours to start. So it's really they're limiting people's usage because they only have a certain amount of compute, and they don't want everybody to overload their systems. Did that make sense, Rajiv, talking about tokens? A little bit how to use efficiently is basically
Yeah, that
when
was
you
great,
think about.
Lauren. Thank you.
Sorry.
That was great. Thank you for explaining that.
Okay. And also, so to use them efficiently, so every time you ask a new question in a chat, it goes back to the beginning and reads everything. So sometimes you can start a new chat and it'll be faster, it'll be more efficient. You will also see in some of the tools that it will compact your message. So it means that like it's reading too much, it can't think so hard. So sometimes there you want to start over. So you really want to think about if you're doing a big project, how can you limit the amount of information you're giving it? And also you want to give it the information in ways that makes it easier for it to read. So you can ask it that. So you can convert your PDFs into text files, and you can ask it to do that first so that it makes it a lot easier for it to read, things like that. And then the Excel model, the formulas are in there. It's building everything in a formula. Nothing was hard coded in that Excel tool. So it's updatable and it's checkable.
Great. Thanks, Lauren.
Great. Um, Sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name. Is it Katui? Sorry if I mispronounced.
That's okay. It's Ketty Way. I joined a bit late, so I apologize if this is something you covered. Cowork is fantastic because it touches your file system, but the skills are cloud-based. I actually use Cowork Terminal and, Claude Code Terminal and Cowork, but the skills are not shared. I've got a kind of hacky method of getting them like together and keeping each up to date. Is there anything you or anyone else on the call has found that's helpful to kind of share skills across Cowork and Claude Code? Because I have not found the right solution just yet and was wondering if anybody else has figured that out.
So yeah, that's kind of frustrating. So what I do is because Cowork lives in my system on my computer, right? I have a filing system for everything. And I have a folder that says skills. So I pull down all my skills into that filing system.
Okay,
so
so
that
you don't
both
use the cloud-based skills within Cowork. Okay.
Yeah, those two you can pull down. So yeah, I pulled everything down into my local system so that it knows to use, it knows where to find them basically. And in your instruction manual, your Claude MD file, you can say like, look in my skills folder first. Steve,
Okay.
do you do it a different way?
No, that's exactly what I did. I actually basically I grabbed all the skills I have in Cowork and a lot of the ones that Anthropic created. I downloaded those and I dumped them because in the Claude MD, so if you're using the terminal, at the Claude MD, there's a skills subfolder in there, and I just replicated them all in there. And then, but I manually, if I make a change to one, I manually sync them back and forth. But that way, then every Claude code project has access to those skills, right? So, but I also don't go backwards. Like I've built a couple that are in Claude Code, but I don't actually usually use those in Cowork 'cause they're very generally specific to Claude Code. But yeah, but that's the only way to do it right now.
Yeah,
But great
that's what I
question
do
though.
too.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's why I like this. For me, it's the way my brain works is the thinking in systems, right? So it's like you have to organize your files. It might take a lot of setup if your brain doesn't work that way, but once you set it up that way, it makes life a lot easier. Thanks for the question. Yeah. Any other questions? Or anything you all would like to see? Yeah, GitHub, you can also, if people have access to or use GitHub, you can definitely save your everything in GitHub instead of using your local system. It's just personal preference if you like to use GitHub by your filing system versus your computer. Any other questions?
Actually, Lauren, if I can make one more comment, just
Go
back
for
to
it.
the ecosystem question from earlier, where people were asking about Gemini versus the others. One of the real big difference is in the Gemini ecosystem, it really only lets you connect to other Google tools, right? YouTube, Photos, Mail, Drive, things like that. If you're in Anthropic or if you're in ChatGPT, not only can you connect to the Google ecosystem, you can connect to the Microsoft ecosystem, plus things like, Atlassian and Zoom and HubSpot and Salesforce and Notion and Figma. There's just a complete different approach, whereas Google has really said, hey, we're just going to focus on only in the Google ecosystem, except there is one version. They sell a separate enterprise version of Gemini that does have a lot of these other business connectors, Box and Dropbox and Asana and things like that. But the general workspace ones that most of us have access to, you can't do that. It's just Google only.
So, class, you asked about using Claude or AI to build my website. So, this was before Cowork came out. I actually used Claude, just the chat, to help me design it. And then I used Google AI Studio, actually, which is like Claude Code in a certain sense. But they have a section in AI Studio called Build, where you can build apps, you can build websites. There's other tools out there that you can use, but that's what I used was Google AI Studio. Now, when I update my website, I use Claude Code to update it. But again, I am not a developer. I can fake speaking HTML and CSS, but that's about it. And it was really simple to do that. So anonymizing your inputs, it really depends on like if you're posting your personal health data or you have an NDA or it's client data, you want to really, really be very careful. For anything that's confidential or anything that you don't want to be on the internet, do not use a free account. You want to use a paid account with any of the services, and you want to opt out of training. Even if you have a paid account in Google, it's a little bit rough to opt out. So you want to be careful with that. But with anonymizing your, if you're asking it to run P&L and you don't want that out, you aren't supposed to show that to anyone. You can, remove the client's names. But you don't want to necessarily anonymize it with AI because it's going to see the original. So I don't know, Steve, did you have any specific advice on anonymizing?
No, I think the point you made about using the paid tools only and turning off trading data is really important. If you use the commercial tools, there's a real difference between the consumer grades that most of us use and then the commercial ones, right? There's like Teams and business ones. Those by default, they don't train on data, so you don't actually have to de-anonymize stuff. So if you got a Teams or business subscription to ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini, you're okay. It's only when you're using the sort of the consumer grade ones with training off, be really, really careful about that stuff, right? I would just be very hesitant to load confidential stuff in there, but with the commercial ones, you're okay.
And then you show out, when you're productionalizing Gen AI, you mean like creating a marketing flow? Is that what you mean?
There's a lot of scope to that. But I mean, there's a lot of different ways you can go with that. But I was thinking about like it's one thing. Again, I came in a little late, so if it's not relevant for discussion, you can table it. It's fine. But I was thinking about like it's one thing if you're using Claude or ChatGPT like individually as a one-off, and then it's a whole different ballgame if you're then trying to productionalize that to a company or to multiple people or to a team and things of that nature.
So you can still use Claude Code and Claude Cowork and build agents that can build out scaled implementations of whether it's, advertising copy, emails, images, ads. You just want to be careful with those, one, for copyright issues, two, for slap. So even if you train AI on, what your brand voice is, if you're creating 100 different ads, there'll be slop in there unless you actually go in and check. AI still really does not have a good sense of humor. It doesn't necessarily come across as authentic. So even if you train it with your voice or a brand voice, it can still be off. So there are definitely a lot of ways and there's a lot of other tools actually for Gen AI for creating content at scale. But you can also, today was mostly about Claude Code and about Claude. So with Claude Code
Okay.
and Claude Cowork, you can create agents. I have an agent that does a bunch of brand frameworks, but I always have a human in the loop before I send it out. Is that what you're asking about, Yeshua?
Yeah, I think that's in the realm of it. And just, I'm sorry, I came in a little late.
It's okay.
Claude Code work, is that that's different than Claude Code in the sense that, yeah, sorry, you probably covered that before, so I apologize.
So Claude Cowork is part of Claude's desktop app, and it's just like Claude Code, except it's much more user-friendly. It's built for knowledge workers specifically. So if you download the desktop app, it's Claude Cowork is in there.
Got it. So it's more point and click and for people that are non-technical to leverage Gen AI.
It's basically intended for non-developers. So
Yeah.
anybody who's afraid of using code,
So, right.
Cowork is you just use it's English pretty much. So it's very user-friendly.
Great. Thank you.
Sure. So sorry. Can you use Claude to translate everything? When you say translate, do you mean to another language or you mean convert between the two? Beth.
Yes, I mean, from one language to the other language.
So they all are trained on different languages. I cannot, from personal experience, tell you how good they are as a local. You'd have to ask a local pretty much, but they can translate between the languages. I've heard one of my friends is Swiss, and she said when she talks to it in Swiss German, it doesn't necessarily understand what she's saying. So definitely, it definitely is trained in language. You just need to read it as a local and check.
Yes, so my question is, so for example, if you need to translate, say, from this PowerPoint file is in French, you want to translate it into English. Well, Google can do it, but can Claude do it automatically? Just replace all the English, replace all the French language into English in the same format within the same file, just create basically an English version out of the French version. Can Claude do that, or do you need to create the agent to do that?
I would do it in steps, which would be a skill. So it can do it because you want to make sure that it's doing each piece correctly. So I would first ask it to read it and then translate it. And then I would ask it to copy the template. And then I would ask it to recreate it because you don't want it's not magic. The more it has to do in one go, the more mistakes it can make. So I like to like where I don't know if you saw the memory diagram I showed. I like to think of everything in steps. And if you
Right.
give AI steps, it'll do a much better job.
Okay, thank you.
The best techniques to save tokens with the free version. Hmm. Is probably you want to just probably start start new chats often. So if you have a really long chat, that's when you start using a lot of tokens. Or don't upload a lot of. So if you're wanted to read an Excel file, don't upload it as an Excel file. Convert it into a CSV and ask it to read that. Same thing with PDFs. Convert them into text files and ask him to read the text files first. So the more you can compress the information that you're giving it, you'll you use less tokens for everybody. Yeah. Any other questions? Oh, Eric, you have another question?
On the back of what you just said, I'm sorry. I'm so amazed how quick I raise my hand and you get right to me. I keep waiting this queue here. So you were talking about how opening up a new conversation then allows you to save on the compute usage. What about when you maintain very long projects and histories? Like I maintain stuff, for instance, on legal, our contracts, and I keep all our contracts together and keep running it, and it builds on top of it and remembers it. But like you're saying, now that I never realized this, it actually does start to take quite a bit of time, and I do get timeouts where I've overused my compute usage. What do you do with those? And it also is across different products. So like within Claude, it doesn't carry things across projects. Within Chat GPT, Grok, some of the others, it'll carry the memory across different projects. So how do you start to minimize large, long historical data sets the way that you just described?
So Claude is set up that the project memory is specific. With ChatGPT, you can turn that on and off.
It just maintains it across it. You can set it up different ways, but
Yeah.
both of them get very, very long. Like Claude Code, I've got extremely long agents that we've built, but they actually time out quite a bit. So based on what you were just saying, I'm guessing I'm reaching my limits very, very quickly because it's historically going back and looking at everything. Do you break that into a new project then, or how would you do that?
I don't break it into new projects. I just start a new chat within the project.
Within the
Or you
project?
can literally just ask your agent and say, how can I make this project more efficient for you? And maybe it's that your data sets, you can convert them into, I don't know, CSVs or some other type of file that it's easier for Claude to read. But you literally just ask Claude and say, this is a lot of, I'm using a lot of tokens. How can I make this more efficient? And it will tell you.
But what happens is, when I end up where I do that with some of the code we write, we end up with a lot of branches. So it's like the old, I know you said you're not the coder, but like one of the biggest challenges when you write code is when you branch it and then maintaining the branches. So within it, if you start branching it, how do you turn around and keep it from getting just all over the place? I don't know what other really good term it would be used to describe that, but it's like that's why I keep them all often within the same conversation.
So using projects will help you a lot. And also putting that, you can also add more to your project's instructions as opposed to one conversation. If you're doing it in Claude Code, you can, what I do is every time I do use a project, at the end of the day, I ask it to give me a wrap up. So like, what did you do today? What changed? How can I make this better? So it gives me a handoff document every day. And then I can ask the next day, the next time I use this agent, to start with that handoff document. So it doesn't have to go back and read the whole project again. I don't know,
Okay.
Steve. I don't know if you're still around, Steve. I don't know if you have a better way to answer Eric's questions with the huge files.
No, I mean, projects is definitely the answer that I focus on for it in particular. And what I'll do is I'll load them up in, you can add the files as sort of the source files for all the projects. Then every
Right.
conversation, can reference those. And I actually like Claude because like I have different, like all my clients, like I do not want the memories bleeding from one to another, right? Whereas ChatGPT by default bleeds unless you explicitly turn it
Right.
off. So,
Right.
but I don't have a better way to manage large ones. That's just all that's what I do. Or if I was using code, I would actually have a dedicated directory and have it like sort of process them just in that one directory. And I actually have a skill in there that when I basically start a new chat in Claude Code specifically, it actually copies the output of all that chat in every day. It basically replicates conversations like the Claude AI chat does, right? So I can keep all that stuff. But that way I can point it at a directory and have it do as much stuff as it needs, and it summarizes everything. But yeah, it's a challenge, especially if you have large amounts of content. So
Yeah, because mine, Steve, it's very much like when you and I discussed before the legal, when you were doing, I'm taking entire business functions like accounts payable, and
mhm.
in there's, for instance, cash management, where you've got a branch that goes over here and starts evaluating the cash available to make the payments live as someone's putting, hundreds and hundreds of different requests through. So I get a lot of branches on them, and it just gets so unwieldy then with the compute calls in it. So it reminds me of when you're doing some of those large legal
Mhm.
analysis. Mine's not really the docs. Mine's the logic that we've used in
Yeah.
the business process to create it.
Just the one nice thing that you can do, particularly with Claude Code, is if you have to do a bunch of branch offs like that, Eric, it allows you to call subagents, right? And the beauty of the subagent is each subagent gets its own complete context memory. So if you're using the 1 million token version of Opus 4.6, every time you have it call up a subagent to go run a process, it starts a completely fresh, it has its own 1 million token context window. So it doesn't pollute the big
Oh,
one.
okay.
So that's the way I've
Okay.
been doing things. So you can actually fire off like 10 things in parallel. Each one gets, now you're going to burn a lot of tokens, but it doesn't pollute it and you don't run out of memory fast. I mean, that's been a huge time saver for me when I've got like really complex tasks.
So do you then have to within it turn around and say, hey, can you branch this? Use a sub agent as you're branching it, and it knows enough then to turn around and move that off. How do you initiate the sub agents?
Just tell it to create a subagent for every subtask you want it to go run, and it will do it automatically. And then
Okay.
you can say, once these are done, I need you to consolidate all the things back into a single output for me, and it will do that too. It's really, really great that way.
I
Yeah.
got one more question. I don't want to go too deep because I'm going to lose so many people. Have you successfully been able to go back with a long stream you have like that and go, by the way, can you go back to these 3 branches and create subagents to run them without it breaking what you've already written? Do you understand?
You're saying go way back into a conversation, say from yesterday, if you got a long thread, and say spin off subagents for these 3 tasks, kind of thing.
I'll just go back weeks. I mean, you've got to remember, I'm doing an entire process across a company. So what's happening is you're running out of memory and you're branching them and we're having to put them together. I'm wondering when they get large enough, if I can go back to something that was done a couple of weeks ago and say, by the way, where you picked up this particular piece of logic, handle that now with a subagent. And if it's able to maintain what it did as it branches that subagent.
I don't know. I haven't tried that.
Okay, I didn't know if you tried. Okay, that's fine.
I haven't
I'm
gone
sorry.
back that far either, but
Yeah.
I would like do that handoff document and like ask it to explain that task and then start over.
Yeah, that's what I've been doing. It's really, I'll tell you, it's very valuable in those long-term logic chains like that to be able to do that over weeks and weeks because it's beyond, I'm not the smartest guy, so it's beyond my ability to do that. That's one of the things I really like. So, all right, I won't take us down that path, but I appreciate
Thanks
your
for the
answer.
questions. Yeah.
Yeah.
We were only scheduled for an hour, so I really appreciate everybody who's still on and who stayed on for the whole hour. Steve, when is your webinar coming up? May?
I actually don't remember the date. To be perfectly honest,
Okay.
Lauren.
Steve has a webinar in about a month, so
Yeah.
make sure to sign up for that one. We will stay. I'll stay on for a few minutes if there are more questions. And thank you all really much for attending. Please feel free to reach out on WhatsApp or email or LinkedIn to me or Steve if you have further questions. So thanks so much.
Yeah, awesome
Thank you.
presentation, Lauren.
That was
It
great, by the way.
fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
That was really good.
Yeah, it was great.
I'll ask one more question actually. Have you either of you dealt with memory and how to deal with short-term and long-term memory?
So, in what sense of the things you don't want it to remember, or so? Let me just explain to other
all
people.
the whole thing basically. You know the you can have like you can have things that are wrong in there, and then how to deal with that, and then also how to know what is relevant in terms of bringing that memory in, and then also distinguishing between the short-term and long-term memory.
So, a memory for both, well, for ChatGPT and Gemini and Anthropic, you can see what it remembers about you and you can edit it. In the individual projects within Claude, there's individual project memory and you can edit that. So that's the short-term memory. So, and you can also
Is that as a JSON, or how is that available? How do you access, how do you see sort of what the memory is?
there's in settings, you can see it. So you can just go through the user interface, and it's for all of them. It's just like a pop-up on the screen, and you can edit it, or you can also just ask them like, "What do you know about me?" Or "Don't forget this. Don't talk about this," stuff like that. And also,
In the settings, it's just basically just English, just in a window. Is that what
Yeah.
that is?
exactly.
Okay.
Anthropic created a tool to import memory from ChatGPT. So Anthropic has a prompt that you can ask all the tools, and it will pull up your memory for you, and it'll get it as a text file, so you can edit that too and say, tell each of them what to forget or what to remember.
Okay, that's helpful.
Div, you had a question?
Me?
A Div, I see.
Yeah. Sorry.
Hi, Lauren and Steve. Excellent presentation. Thank you so much for everything.
Thank you.
I just posted the question in the chat. I just wanted to know between Claude and Gemini and OpenAI, which one has the best tools to actually grab all the knowledge that we have, from a website, from Airtable, from different sources without having to download and upload everything. How
So
do
they
I
all-
build a
oh, sorry.
knowledge base? Yeah, sorry.
So they all have connectors.
Mm-hmm.
So you can connect Airtable, Asana, Trello directly into all of them, I believe. I'm not sure about Gemini, but definitely into Anthropic and to ChatGPT. There's just a connector, so connect right to your Airtable.
Mm-hmm.
Or YouTube, the best is obviously Gemini, and the Google tools. It really is the best at watching the videos and pulling the information there. But they all pretty much have the connectors. Steve, I don't know if you found ones that are better than the other.
Yeah, if you want YouTube videos, Div, the best one I found is to use AI Studio. So you can go into the Gemini web app and you can say, hey, here's here's a link to a YouTube video, summarize it for me. It'll summarize it for you, but I often want to have the complete transcript out of that video. That's what I'm interested in.
Mm-hmm.
If you go into AI Studio and paste the link in, it will actually go pull it and it'll just give you an amazing result. Whereas the web app will say, oh, sorry, I can't really do that for you. I can just summarize it, right? Even though it technically can, they're trying to sort of hide that capability. But if you need it, you could actually feed in then a list of YouTube videos into AI Studio and say, hey, go grab these transcripts, make me a CSV for each one of these, right? And then you could grab it that way. That's what I would do. The other tools are much better at Airtable. I don't think Gemini actually can access Airtable, but I'm pretty sure ChatGPT and Claude
Okay.
can.
Yeah.
Like the standard chat interface to OpenAI can't even read websites. You can't just say, go read this website and scour it and tell me, can it? I'm not sure. I forget now, but
Yeah, it can do it now. They can do it now. Yeah, they're
They can
really
also,
good at it.
sorry.
Yeah.
They can all search the web. You have some of the tools, you have to make sure that web search is on. But they can all search the web. Some of them can't scrape websites because the websites themselves have a robot blocker.
right.
So that will stop them, but they can all search the web.
I see. Okay. Thank you so much. Okay.
Yeah. Well, thank you all so much. I really appreciate you all showing up. The recording should go out from the Wharton Club of UK and AI Studio. So yeah, reach out if you have any questions. And I appreciate all the questions. And thank you, Steve, for helping me host.
Absolutely.
And we look forward to your webinar in May. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much.